Hello, Flicker.
Hi, Mrs. White. Hey, did you hear the storm last night?
I don't think so. I must have slept through it.
Wow, it was so loud I couldn't get to sleep. And it was a little scary, too. But then my dad came into the room to be sure I was okay. And he stayed in the room with me until I fell asleep.
Well, I'm glad that your dad stayed with you to be sure that you were okay. You know, our Heavenly Father promises to always be with us. And remember that God was with the Israelites in Egypt, and He was with Moses and Aaron when they went before Pharaoh. Remember, God sent all of those plagues because Pharaoh didn't obey God. We can learn from Pharaoh that we need to obey God and His Word. Let's sing our unit song with Melody Joy. Melody Joy, will you sing with us?
I sure will. You know how I love to sing.
I do. Here we go. Do the motions with me.
God's word I will obey. God's word I will obey. It tells me what to do and say. God's word I will obey.
Thanks, Melody Joy, for singing with us.
You're welcome.
So we need to obey God and do what He says in His Word. Well, today we're going to learn how the Israelites needed to obey God and do what He said if they wanted to be safe. Well, after the many plagues that God had sent, He was going to send one more plague. And God told Moses that after this plague, Pharaoh would let the people go. Well, Moses told the people to get ready to leave Egypt. Well, Moses told the Israelites to ask for silver and gold jewelry from their neighbors. He told the people that God wanted each family to kill a little lamb and to put the blood on the door frames of the house. In the middle of the night, God was going to send an angel throughout the land. If there was a home that did not have the blood on the doorposts, the oldest son in that home would die. Well, the Israelites obeyed God's commandment. And they put blood on the doorposts, and they got ready for that night. God had also told them that they were to cook the lamb meat with vegetables for their family to eat just before midnight. And all of the families were to be dressed and ready to travel as they stood around the dinner table or the table eating. Well, that evening finally came, and just like God had said, at midnight, the angel of the Lord came to the different houses. And every house that did not have the blood on the doorpost, the oldest son died. But if there was blood on the doorpost, the angel passed over it. Well, many Egyptians were crying because most of their oldest sons died. Well, the Egyptians did not obey the command of the Lord and put the blood on the doorpost and frames. Well, when Pharaoh found his oldest son dead, he cried out, and he sent a messenger to run to Moses and Aaron and tell them to leave the country at once and take everything with them. He told them to go quickly and leave nothing behind. God's people were finally free to leave Egypt. Well, this event was very important to the Israelites, and they called it the Passover because God's angel would pass over each home that had obeyed God and had put blood on the doorpost of their houses. Well, God told His people to have a special Passover supper every year after to help them remember how God had brought them out of Egypt. Well, as Christians, this event reminds us of Jesus Christ, God's Son, who shed His blood on the cross so that we might be saved from sin. And this celebration is very important to Jews today. The Israelites were the Jews' great-great-great-grandmothers and grandfathers. Well, remember that God wanted his people to have a special Passover supper every year to remember how God had brought them out of Egypt. So, the Jews today still celebrate this occasion in remembrance of their relatives. It's called the Passover. The Passover today starts on the 15th day of the Jewish month Nisan, and it lasts for 7 days. So let's count 7 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that is a lot of celebrating, isn't it? And this celebration is called Seder. And this refers to the meal and order of celebration during the Passover. Well, the Seder has many parts. And in the first part of the Seder, the Jews go through the house and get rid of anything with yeast. Do you know what yeast is? Well, yeast is what makes your bread rise or makes it nice and fluffy. Well, they look for yeast crumbs or anything else that has yeast in it. And they get rid of all the yeast because in the Bible, yeast represents sin. Well, here's a picture of a family going through their house looking for some crumbs that maybe has yeast in it or anything else with yeast, and they're getting rid of them. Well, after they get all of the yeast out of their house, then they get ready for their meal. We have a mystery item. Let's go see what it is. I wonder what it could be. This is interesting. Look at that. Do you know what that says? It says afikoman. Well, I wonder what that means. Do you know what that means? I think it has to do with something inside. So why don't we take a look and see what's inside? Do you know what this is? This is matzah. So this must be a matzah cover. And that is what Jews have in the middle of their table during the Seder. Well, that is kind of a funny name, isn't it? A matzah cover. Well, inside they would have 3 pieces like we have here, 3 pieces of matzah. And it probably looked something like this. And this is bread, but it's not regular bread. It's unleavened bread, or bread that does not rise because it doesn't have any yeast in it. Well, see how this is flat and thin? But look at this bread. This bread is high and fluffy. This bread represents the Israelites being in a hurry. The matzah represents that the Israelites were in a hurry, and such a hurry to leave Egypt that they didn't have time to let their bread rise and get full. So they have unleavened bread. Well, the Jews take the middle piece and they break it in half, just like we have here. This one is already broken in half, and 1/2 is put back into the matzah cover. So we'll put that half back in there like this. And then what they'll do with the other half is they hide it in the house for the children to find. Well, this piece is what afikoman is. It's a bit of the unleavened bread, and that represents the Passover lamb. Well, here's a picture of some children looking for the afikoman, and can you find that piece of unleavened bread or the afikoman in this picture? Well, do you think the children found it? They look kind of excited. Well, it looks like they have found it, and it's right there. Well, the Jews do some other rituals, but the big part of the Passover is their meal. And here is a family gathering together for their meal, and they have things like vinegar and parsley, bitter herbs, matzah, egg, and lamb. And remember that the lamb was what the Israelites used on their Passover night. And God told them to take the blood of the lamb and put it on the doorpost, and then they ate the lamb as well. Well, the Jews today have other things that they eat like haroseth, and that's a combination of many different things like apples and nuts and cinnamon. And remember that Pharaoh made the Israelites make bricks out of mixture. Well, this haroseth helps the Jews today remember the mixture that the Israelites people used to make bricks and how hard they had to work. So why don't you join me as we make some haroseth in our activity? All right, well, you should have some apples that are diced and some nuts, some grape juice, sugar, and cinnamon. So let's combine those all together. So we'll start with our nuts. You can put them in your bowl and mix that around. So this is just basically a mixture, just like the Israelites had when they were making the bricks. And then we'll put some cinnamon in here. 2 teaspoons, and then 2 teaspoons of sugar. And we'll mix that all up. And then some grape juice, and just put enough in to moisten it. So you can add some more again later if you need to, if it needs to be a little more moistened. But it looks like mine's getting pretty covered with everything. And once it's covered, then why don't you and your mom take this and you can put it in a food processor or in a blender and mix it up really good. And when you're done, you can join me. So now we have our haroseth, and I hope yours looks something like this. And you can eat it with some crackers, or if you have some matzah, you can eat it like that too. Well, I hope you enjoy eating your haroseth and your matzah or your crackers, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.